So the first 15 minutes, I'm going to show you through an example of a real unit through photos and explanations, so you have an idea how IB, so-called PYP, works, what it means, right? So I see some new parents, and there are also parents who've been with us for years, but that does not necessarily mean that you understand how IB PYP works. So that's my first topic. That will be for about only 15 minutes. After that, I'll be joined by a few members of our academic teams. Su Laoshi will be talking to you about our Chinese program. And then we have Randy detailing about our English program, Meijing, science, and then myself again for math. And then that will wrap up our 2 hours. We'll end on time at 12 noon, and then we'll stay around, most of us, for questions. Okay? So, now, if it works. It doesn't. Okay, so that's, okay, an overview. So this is what we will be presenting to you today. That the first one will be what I explained, the overview of the IB PYP curriculum design, and then an inside look at the key subjects and how parents can help at home. So an overview first. I'd like you to take away 3 things today about IB PYP. Of course, that's an oversimplified version of what IB PYP is about, but I think, with the time that we have, I'd like you to understand through the example how enduring conceptual understanding is taking place and what it means. What does it mean? Because that's such a buzzword, conceptual learning, right? Not just the data, not just the knowledge. And then the second one is I would like you to understand how units of inquiry integrates different subject matters. So when it says content connection, it means how it connects to different subject matters, such as math, language, social studies, and science. Hi, welcome. These are all free seats.
Oh my goodness.
we may charge people in the back, but
Well, you're not going to call them the people.
well, that depends if I'm happy or not.
Oh, okay.
What is PYP?
Oh, thank you for that
I
question.
know IB, but not PYP.
IB stands for International Baccalaureate. PYP stands for Primary Years Program. So that covers from age 3 all the way through 5th grade in our school. Okay, thank you for that question. And then last but not least is our skill-based learning, what it means to be focusing not only on the knowledge itself, but also skills. So we're going to take a look at a kindergarten unit that just took place this year. Whose children are in kindergarten this year? Wonderful. Okay. So some of you have already passed that. Some of you are actually looking forward to having children in K. So I'm going to pick just this one class and show you a seemingly simple, innocent unit. It actually has a lot to it. So this unit is called Family History, or Family Histories. This is what we call a central idea. It's fun to see who has to. Take the front row seat. Welcome.
When you come late, you have to go to the front.
Exactly.
Maybe.
Okay. You do get to answer questions or ask them. So we're talking about this kindergarten unit, right? This is the central idea. For each unit, there is a central idea. That's their takeaway. So the central idea to this one is family histories change over time and place, and they connect to the present. It looks, okay, true. So let's see how we start. Remember the first I talked to you about conceptual learning, right? So we always identify 2 to 3 key concepts. We meaning our teachers when we do our planning. So one of the key concepts for this unit is called change. How do we teach that? So we don't just start with, let's talk about your family. We start with concepts. So this is a key concept, it's called change. There are many ways to teach that concept. So one of the principles is we teach or students learn a new concept first through something similar. It could be a game, an activity, just so they understand what change means, and sometimes even to get them to understand the vocabulary in Chinese, right? So in this case, students discuss about and then they drew or wrote down the changes they themselves have gone through as they grew up. So if you could read, this is Le Tian, right, one of the students, and the teacher also volunteered how she has changed over time, from childhood. So that's something very personal and familiar to them. So through that activity, we introduce them to the concept of change, 改变. So they have that idea in their mind, right? Okay, so they talk and they drew and they wrote. So now with that change, that concept in mind, they're going to apply it to this new context, which is family history. Because when you talk to them, family history, what does that mean, right? What does it mean? So we tell them that it means things in the family change over time or over space. So because they already have this change, that concept in mind, they're learning to apply the learned concept in the new context. Students explore the change of locations in family histories. So they learn to identify locations, and the yarn signifies the change, right? The movements. So that's one activity at the concept level. The next concept, the other key concept, is called connection. And don't underestimate that when they're introduced a new concept, that's something really new. What does it mean, right? Even the Chinese, when you tell them 连接, but what does that mean? So there is another activity, but that's at the first grade level. Because these key concepts stay the same, stay constant. There are 8 key concepts in IB PYP. So year after year, unit after unit, they learn the same key concepts again and again in a spiral way, but and see how it's applied to different contexts, right? So for example, in first grade, when they learn connection, they play a very simple game that the whole class, they spaced out and they stood in the classroom and using a yarn. So for example, from me to Beijing, I say, okay, we both have shoulder length hair. So we're finding something similar or something in common between the two of us, and that connects us. So, and then I threw the yarn and she took it, and then Meijing will find the next student and find something in common. So the yarn will continue, and through that activity, we introduce to them that the concept connect or connection, meaning finding something in common. And then they would apply that concept to various forms of arts. They would be looking for something in common between 2 forms of arts. For example, between drawing and dancing. What's in common, right? So same thing, similar idea, similar process applied here. So they learn something through something personal. They learn the new concept connection. They visited their preschool classrooms and pre-K classrooms and find something in common between preschool, pre-K, and kindergarten. And through that, they learn, okay, that's what it means to connection. And then also the Chinese language. So after that, they learn to apply that connection, that learned concept, in a new context. They discuss how the past was connected to present in their own family histories. So now they know what it means to find connection, to find something in common that you shared, right? So they also learn about change and then connection. And they also explore that learned concept connection in the larger context on the field trip. So they went on a field trip, Howell, I think that's the historical farm, and they visited a farm and a school dated back many, many years ago. So for them, after they learned this concept, this field trip took on a new meaning. So it's not just there to look around and be surprised randomly. They were there looking for connections between then and here, now and then, right? So it's something that's very purposeful for them. In addition to being fun, right, out there and being really surprised and they were actually very pleasantly surprised at how things have changed and how some of the things stay constant, right? So that's what we call the conceptual learning, even at the kindergarten level. And as you could imagine, the same process repeats over and over when they go through the grades. But that's what we call conceptual learning. So now, the second takeaway I would like you to have today about the PYP is what we call the content connections. And you'll learn more through the presentation of our individual teachers, how they connect their own subjects to the units of inquiry. When I say content connections, it means how units of inquiry integrates with different subject matters. So in this particular unit, it's about math. In addition to language, right? Language is really present throughout. So learning math skills in an authentic context. And here they're learning about graphing. So students graph many things. And here you see 3 pictures. They were actually all connected. These are steps that were carefully planned by our teachers. So in the beginning, they do it in person, right? So we set up this chart on the floor and they stand in. It says, how many siblings do you have in your family? So if you have 0, 1, 2, or 3, they stand in a square, right? So they do it kinesthetic. So it's movement to them, and you see how Rebecca also joined with her little walker. So after that, this is called the symbol representation. So this is real person. Then they know that each square represents one person. After that, we use a symbol to represent. And through the next step to that, this is a different topic, but next step they know how to do a bar graph, or you do the squares. So it's from person to symbol to actually a chart. Okay, so there are steps to it. This is how they learn in a very engaging context. And naturally, we talked about geographic, right, locations and places, and how to read map or a globe. So now skills. My third topic is skills. So we have conceptual learning, subject matter connection, and now skills. PYP calls these sets of skills transdisciplinary. It just simply means that you see the same skills regardless of what subject you're talking about. So they have identified groups of skills, including research skills, communication skills, self-management skills, all those skills that you see them regardless of what subject you deal with. So when teachers plan for these units, we identify all these, we identify key concepts that need to be learned or covered, what subject matters that we connect to, and also identify several major skills that we want students to practice. So with this particular unit, they practice research skills, including data collection. Okay, so they collect many data. And also they learn how to record them and present data. Okay, so it may seem simple, but you practice these skills in different contexts year after year throughout PYP. So that's how they learn to do. So also presentation skills. Apparently, most of the units do end with the end of unit presentations, and you see that they talk to their very attentive audience. They're authentic, and they all pretend to be surprised as them, about their own family histories. So now just simply, there is actually a lot to it. We could spend the full 2 hours on PYP design, but in a nutshell, these are the takeaway that I'm hoping for you to have today is the PYP units of fifth grade, it's about enduring conceptual understanding. And imagine we're talking about that was just one unit in kindergarten. There are 6 units from kindergarten through fifth grade, 6 units a year, and then for all these years. So that's what we're aiming for, enduring conceptual understanding. There's also rich content connections and skill-based learning. Okay?